Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I truly appreciate the opportunity to come and visit you again. This, by the way, is not my first time I've been here. I came up with a Polaroid, that's Polaroid for you young people, picture of Tom and I the last time I sat here. And I must admit I had a mild panic attack about halfway here, thinking, oh, I wonder if I wore the same shirt as I did 15 years ago. But I'm happy to announce I have a new shirt. I am married for 44 years, and very interestingly, I've been married to the same woman for 44 years. Have three very lovely and accomplished daughters spread out all over the world. And I'm very pleased to say that I was a bit nervous about coming here again, but I realized I'm truly an expert. I live 83 miles away from here, so anything more than 50. I have also been dragged tooth and nail into the 21st century when my daughter, one of my daughters is a teacher, showed me how to make and reproduce a PowerPoint presentation. The last time I was here, in fact, it's in my car now in case the PowerPoint didn't work, is the old Kodak carousel. So I'm prepared no matter what's happening. Was listening to some of the people talk about other speakers that we've had here before. Bunch of high-powered people. This presentation, by the way, is going to be nothing but a lot of fun. As Tom mentioned, I've been involved in the wildlife community for a long time. And one of my favorite quotes is from John Muir, who, paraphrased it, says something to the effect that if you tug on any single thing in nature, you'll find all the rest. And truly, if you take the time to see what a magnificently natural, wondrous world this really is, there's some really wonderful things out there in nature. You just have to dig around for them a bit. I've also been said, President Tom said, so how long's your talk? I said, how long you want me to talk? He goes, well, we're a little crowded today. I said, well, anywhere from 20 minutes to 2.5 hours. So we'll see how things go. So what am I going to talk about? Been involved in raptor banding and study for over 30 years. What is a raptor? Basically, a raptor is defined as a bird of prey. Includes a group of birds, like there are passerines, psittacines, gallinaceous birds, corvids. It's a group of birds that basically eat other things. They're just something remarkable about a bird that is pretty dangerous to deal with. How in the world did I get involved? Back in the mid 80s, my brother-in-law, who was a naturalist for the in Virginia, said, how'd you like Cape May? I said, all right. He says, we trap hawks. What do you do with hawks? Well, I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, we get up we make breakfast, we go to the blinds at 6, we stay in the blind until 7 o'clock, we come back, take a shower, then go to the bars till 2. Well, being a math whiz, I'm thinking to myself, that's only about 3 hours worth of sleep. That's what they used to do back in the old days. We have, of course, matured quite a bit now, so we still stay in the blinds the same amount of time, but all the extracurricular activities have gone away. I was totally amazed by the passion and the sincerity that this bunch of misfits exhibited. To look at them, you'd think, oh my word, I'd walk across the street if I saw these guys on the, but I'm telling you, they are totally committed to nature, understanding nature. There is no more important thing than the health and safety of the birds that we're dealing with. So I was hooked, hook, line, and sinker. Why is banding important? It has, by the way, come under a bit of fire lately from some people that say, and I'll get into this in a bit, You don't need to, with all this electronic surveillance things and the telemetry, et cetera. What do you need to disrupt the migratory patterns, et cetera, for? Well, the answer is you do physically get to handle these birds, and you get to handle great numbers of these birds, not just a bird or two. And as we all know, you can't make judgments based on one or two things. It's 1 or 2,000 or 1 or 200,000. Then you can start making determinations. So you do get to handle birds. You get to notice trends. For example, I'm associated with a banding project at Cape May, New Jersey that is the longest continuously running banding project in the world. Started in the mid-'60s. Some of the trends have been, at its heyday, we were banding 6,000 birds a year. That's down to 2,500 now. 70% of the birds were sharp-shinned hawks. Now the sharp-shins are now, we catch more Cooper's hawks than sharp-shins. Why is that happening? Well, as I've said very often, and I think that the hallmark of what I'm doing here, we're in the business of observation. We make the observations and allow other people the vehicle to try and draw conclusions. Anyway, there are many research projects. The one here is, this is a hatch year or an immature peregrine falcon that I caught, and it's being fitted with a transmitter, a solar-powered transmitter. You get to study the migration routes and patterns. 20 years ago, maybe it's been 25 years ago, we noticed that we started catching more peregrine falcons. And then I'll never forget the time somebody caught an adult peregrine falcon. And we shut down and we went to look at this adult peregrine falcon. Now, 25 years later, it's an extremely common to catch peregrine falcons, i.e., due to the restoration projects and the hacking projects, peregrine falcons have made an amazing comeback. One of the observations was, okay, so now we've started catching lots of immature males and females. We catch a few adult females. We never caught an adult male. Why is that? All the peregrines that we catch at Cape May come from Greenland. And the supposition is the immatures are so inexperienced they need to hug the coast to migrate south to South America. The adult females are so big that they need to touch base because they're just their body weight, but that the adult males are, number one, so experienced, number two, so light and fast, they just go from Greenland to South America without stopping. For some reason that's changed. We now catch adult males as well. Another migration is Swainson's hawks, which I have a picture of one, never used to be east of the Mississippi. About 10 years ago, somebody caught a Swainson's hawk. That's the observation. What's the conclusion from that? Is there a new breeding population? Is it established east of the Great Lakes? Why is that? So we've been trying to put telemetry units on the Swainson's hawks to try and find out where they're nesting. Foreign coverage. This is like the gold standard of what we're supposed to be doing here. This bird right here had a black band, a green band, and an old beat up silver band on. Basically, that's what you try and do, is find out what that is. All these band numbers go into a huge mainframe computer at the bird banding lab at Patuxent, Maryland. Anybody can access this to get data to study any species that you want to. If you ever run across a bird that has a band on it, all you need to do is go on the website to the bird banding lab, type in the number, and you'll receive a certificate that says where it was banded, who banded it, when, etc. It's pretty cool. Who can do it? It is a very highly regulated endeavor. Not only do you have to have a federal bird banding permit, but you also have to be licensed in the state that you want to do it for. The categories basically are master bander, and as a master bander, you can deal with the bird banding lab and order bands, and you can have sub-permittees underneath there. kind of difficult to do it. It's just not one of those things they allow everyone to do. And I would remind people that all birds of prey are federally protected. When's it done? It is done in the fall, and we take advantage of the fall migration. That's not to say that birds don't have a northerly migration in the spring. It's just that in the fall, it's much more concentrated, much more organized, much more predictable, and therefore much more efficient to be able to catch these birds. Why do birds migrate? By far, the biggest reason is they follow their stomachs. A real common, and everybody knows about migration, of course, are robins. They leave sometime in the fall, and they come back in spring. It's the first time of spring, except for this year when spring hasn't arrived. But they follow their stomachs, their food source. They certainly, the migration is to ensure the survival of the fittest. One of the really striking facts of migration is up to 70% of birds will die on their first migration. So these birds that do migrate, if you catch an adult bird, that bird has set itself in the top 30%. That's pretty spectacular. It's like saying you've got to get a perfect score on your SATs and be able to run a world-class 26-mile marathon before you're allowed to have kids. That's Mother Nature's way of saying the survival of the fittest. Some birds travel thousands of miles. I mentioned that the peregrine falcons go from Greenland to South America. There are other non-raptor species that travel tens of thousands of miles, and it's just spectacular that they can do this. Other birds don't migrate at all. There are some birds, like barred owls, that they just stay in one place. Other birds, there are different types of migrations where they call them dispersals. They sort of spread out. Others of them, interestingly, do altitude. They gain altitude in the springtime and they lose altitude to their nesting sites. Just to mention some other just truly incredible migrations. I put in, I did not take this photograph, a friend of mine did. Snowy owls have invasion years, and it's pretty much prey species driven, but they usually don't come this far south. Well, about 5 years ago, it was just an incredible sightings of snowy owls here. Hummingbirds. We only have one species of hummingbirds east of the Mississippi, the ruby throat. This little teeny tiny ounce bird goes from Canada to Central America. I'm staggered that can happen. What's even more staggering is monarch butterflies. Anybody who's really interested in nature, check out monarch butterfly migration. It is unbelievable. As an aside, 20 years ago at Cape May, during the monarch migrations, there would be hundreds of thousands of monarch butterflies migrate through in the fall. Been a long time since I've seen that. Loss of habitat, pesticides, parasitism, things are getting, we need to pay attention to some of these indicators. If monarch butterflies disappear, who cares? Might not affect anything other than it would be a really uncolorful world. Saw-whet owls. I'll mention more about saw-whet owls. 30 years ago, nobody even realized that saw-whet owls migrated. They're these tiny little birds, and they finally realized that they migrated when the shipping lanes in the Great Lakes one fall realized that these little birds are dropping out of the sky. Well, they'd gotten blown under the Great Lakes, and they were basically literally falling out of the sky. Okay, how do birds migrate? Certainly wind direction. They're going from north to south, so northwest winds are what we look for. Wind deflection. In other words, if you have a mountain, as the the wind hits that mountain, it deflects upwards, it will allow birds to kind of ride the winds up. And thermals. Thermal basically is this incredible gathering or wind currents that go up, and you'll see these birds soar up hundreds of feet, and then all of a sudden there'll be the stream that they just leave. And what happens is they, without flapping their wings a bit, they can rise up, let gravity take them down, rise up again, and gravity take them down. They can go for tens of miles without exerting any energy at all. Amazing. Cape May. I want to say a word about Cape May. You getting the hook out yet?
No.
Okay. Cape May, New Jersey is one of these incredible geographic phenomena, whereas if you think about Cape May Point comes down, it's almost like an hourglass. So you have the Atlantic Ocean on the east, you have the northwest winds blowing these birds, particularly the immature birds, to the coast. Cape May Point comes down to this literally point of land. You have 17 miles to go across the Delaware Bay. It's just the perfect concentrating area for all birds of migration, whether they be hawks or passerines or anything like that. Other areas, the Great Lakes. I mean, if a bird from the north comes to the Great Lakes, they're not really stupid. They'll go around either end of the Great Lakes. So at the ends of the Great Lakes are great banding places. And of course, ridges. Ridges use both wind deflection, thermals, wind direction. This happens to be in south central Pennsylvania. That little square right there happens to be that blind right here. And this is pretty much where we trap anywhere from September the 1st until Thanksgiving. Anybody have a guess as to why we get out of the mountain at Thanksgiving? Because the next day is deer season. Anyway, this is one of our stations. We take advantage of the high power wires simply because it was cleared land, but there are some amazing days we've had up there. So how do we capture these birds? These are blinds. Oops. These are blinds. Different examples. And as was pointed out to me 30-some years ago, you sit in it for 12 or 14 hours and wait for the birds to fly by. They're surrounded by different traps. I'll get closer looks at these traps later, but before that, in my Kodak carousel, I have wonderful slides of road trapping, which, since I've joined the Digital Society, I don't have any pictures of road trapping. With the blinds, you wait for the birds to fly by you. That happens during the migration. With road trapping, you basically can do this other times of the year. You drive around in a car, see a bird sitting in a tree, and then throw these little chicken wire type Quonset huts with little nylon nooses with a lure bird in them underneath them. So migration, you sit and wait for the birds to come to you. Road trapping, you go to the birds. Okay. There's also, in some of these species, where you can't really call them in, you can trap them in the nest. Barn owl is a perfect example of this. You have to get them when they're older than that, but not so old that they can fly away from you. You go in, get the nest, and right there's a bird with a band on. We use these nets. These are called mist nets. They're about 8 feet tall, 30 feet wide, long. And you attract the birds into them, and as you can see, they can get pretty tangled up. This is not for the faint of heart, because sometimes this takes a lot of patience to get these things out of there. And the birds are not amused, by the way, that they're caught in these nets. So they're trying to bite you and all that kind of stuff. These are called DGs, which is short for Dogaza, and the reason I didn't put Dogaza on there is I have no idea how to spell it. And bow traps. These are different size bows that basically they're on springs and they're cocked like this. This is a lure bird. I'm going to talk about lure birds in a second. And as the hawk lands there, the lure bird's in the center of the trap, and then you can pull the trigger, which catches the bird. Okay, so now you have this bird in the net, in a boat, in a trap. What do? In most cases, there's a classic example of this, but in most cases, if you control the feet, they won't bite you. In most cases, in smaller birds, you know, it kind of is irritating. But some of these birds, you need to be a little careful about handling their feet. They can get you pretty good. Once we catch them, we restrain them. People say, "Oh, my word, you put them in cans, that's awful." In fact, we did a research project one time where we put an esophageal stethoscope in these cans, and the birds immediately calm down. It's almost like putting a hood on a falcon. So you hear this heart rate, it's like, and then you put them in the can, and go, it's really kind of neat. Plus, it keeps the bird from hurting themselves and keeps the bird from hurting you. Different size cans, obviously, for different species of birds. And then we band them. You can sex them if possible, and how you sex these birds, in all instances where there is a difference, females are always bigger than males. Don't want to go into why that is. But we do that by actually measuring what they call the wing chord, which is if you bend the wing, it's from the elbow to the tip of the wing. And it's been well documented which are males and which are females. We weigh them, record all the data, do special studies, some of which are DNA feather sampling, body fat composition, telemetry. Interestingly, we've done heavy metals and chlorinated hydrocarbons. People will say, well, what do you do that for? DDT's been banned since 1972. Yes, it has been in the United States. A lot of these birds migrate into Central and South America. Guess what? Still using DDT in Central and South America. So, been much better, but still a problem. Metabolic chamber monitoring. A friend of mine from University of Vermont is doing a study on external parasites called flat flies. Flat flies are these blood-sucking insects, and he's trying to determine if they can transmit West Nile virus, some of the equine encephalitises. How do they get attracted? All right, here's the bit of a controversial part about hawk banding. We do use lure birds. We are required by law to only use what's called introduced species. Introduced species are English sparrows, starlings, and pigeons, or rock doves. So this is a sparrow and a little bow trap, pigeon. This is catching starlings. This is starlings in here. And I got to tell you, my response to some of the ethical questions of using lure birds has been, you should see the SOP, the Standard Operating Procedure for taking care of lure birds at Cape May. It's 10 pages thick. We take a lot of pride in, and it's an ongoing process, as to how to take care of these lure birds. Because basically, if your lure birds get injured or killed, then you can't catch hawks. How we do protect them, we put leather jackets on them. There's a display at the back for those of you who are interested. I have several jackets back there, and every place you see one of those little holes in one of those old leather jackets, that's protected one of the lure birds from getting. This is an essential part of my banding process. I won't dwell on that too much. Inside the blind, these lines are actually sort of a continuous loop that goes out to a lure pole, down through the trap, attached onto the lure bird, back in, and you can jockey these birds back and forth and make them flap to attract the hawk. The orange lines are the trigger lines. This is sort of inside the blind. This is called a leg gauge. In the instances where you're not sure what size the band it takes, this tells you what size it is. This is sort of looking behind the blind. There's a mist net, DGs, main lure pole. Okay, this is in action. You catch the hawk, you restrain it, you pick a band out, record the data, you put the band on, you weigh it, take a picture of it, let it go. Owl netting, very quickly. How am I doing?
Doing okay.
What are you kicking my leg for? About 8 years ago, my brother-in-law and I, who, by the way, that's the guy who got me into it, decided we were going to go up in the mountains of south central Pennsylvania and just had no idea what we were doing, and put up a bunch of owl nets. In a nutshell, it's one of those things you do after dark. You set the owl nets up, and you turn on an audio lure. And I'm telling you, this audio lure sounds exactly like a big piece of machinery backing up. It's doot, 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 doot. That's the sound. And it attracts these little owls in to these mist nets. So it's at night, you have headlamps on, here's a bird that gets caught in the net, you go in, you process it. They're just about the cutest birds you can possibly imagine. Occasionally you'll catch a screech owl, which interestingly, screech owls will prey on saw-whet owls, so you need to be a little careful about that. And that essentially is how we trap them. Very quickly, you've been most kind and attentive, if I might add. Groups are accipiters. Accipiters are sharp shins, Cooper socks. Here's a sharp shin and a Cooper sock. This is an adult Cooper sock, adult female. Oh no, this is an immature female, adult female. This is an immature goshawk. This is an adult goshawk. These are adults of the same species. This is Cooper sock, sharp shin, goshawk. They look exactly the same as immatures, but different sizes. Northern harriers, those of you astute enough out there will see I've misspelled harrier. Stick another R in here someplace. They're an owl-like bird. They are distinguished by this white spot at the base of their tail. You'll often see them hovering about 30 feet above a field, and then they'll swoop down. This is an immature harrier. This is exactly the same bird, but 2 years later. They have an amazing color dimorphism as they age. Falcons, a male kestrel, female kestrel, female merlin. These are merlins, which is a moderate-sized falcon. Again, a merlin. This is a male peregrine. Peregrines are built for speed. Accipiters are built for maneuverability. They've got very short, broad wings and long tails. They zigzag in around trees really well. Falcons are built for speed, long, pointy wings. This is what gets hawk banders really excited is you think, oh my word, a diseased bird. No, this is a molt pattern. So this basically is a second-year bird. Has immature feathers with adult feathers. Here's an immature peregrine and a full adult. Same bird, different years. Again, this bird has distinguished itself because it's going on at least 2 migrations. It's a rock star. Specialized weapons in peregrines, they've got this notch. Every falcon has a notch right there, and they use it to dislocate the cervical vertebrae in birds. I mentioned that most of the time when you control the feet, they don't bite. That doesn't happen with falcons. Falcons like to bite a lot. Buteos are the soaring birds, an immature red tail, an adult red tail. This is a Swainson's hawks, one of the ones we're trying to figure out where they're nesting from. This is a rough leg. Again, they usually don't come this far south, but that was pretty exciting. Red shoulders, broad wings, and then there's the eagles. The top is an immature bald eagle. The bottom is my friend Bob, who caught an adult bald eagle. This was up at our station in Pennsylvania. And again, probably common knowledge, but bald eagles don't get their classic white head and tail until they're 5 years old. And then golden eagles. This is the golden eagle that I caught all by myself in the bow trap. You need to pay attention when you're handling these birds. This is called the hallux, which is the thumb area, the thumb. That's what kills them. The nail on that bird was over 2.5 inches long. And just for comparison's sake, that evening I went and caught a saw-whet owl, so these are the talons of a saw-whet versus this one. Pictures of a golden eagle. Again, the golden eagles, they've got this golden mane. And by far the best thing of the whole thing, the last slide, is you get to let them go. That's it.